ことで、そこから先他の武器種っていうのは体験を軸にしながら、じゃあどう差別化できるかっていう意味合いで今の、武器種のコンセプトになっているところもありますので。
You see? You hear? Gore weapon that is the great sword! Ah, smug mode. Hello, my fellow hunters, and welcome, one and all, to lots of wildsy goodness. Yes, there's been some delicious tidbits revealed around the place, a lot of which in IGN's Wilds first month interviews, and we need to talk about it, such as, how decorations are going to actually work in Wilds now. That's a fairly big deal, but also a lot of fascinating insight into things like choosing returning monsters, and indeed some hard confirmations like the fact that Basarios won't be in, well, Wilds. Yeah, I mean, it's not the most tragic news as fun as he is, but, it's still okay. It's nice to get a, opposite of a confirmation that's one off the list of possible speculation targets. In any case, we also have some actual kind of newsy stuff in the sense that we're about to get some new monster gameplay, specifically on the returning Gypsaros. That'll be happening at the Taipei Game Show, and will be, well, at the times that you can see on screen, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Of course, you can hold off and experience him yourself in the beta along with the second mystery monster, but if you can't wait, well, there you go. So, where to actually begin then? Well, I think with the weapons and the decoration system. The TLDR here is it's going to feel a lot like World and Iceborne, with random powerful decorations that you can find from various hunts. In fact, we did see that happen, a gem as a reward from a hunt in the various gameplay we have seen so far, but they said that specifically just hunting a monster out in the field randomly as opposed to like getting a quest, at least that's my interpretation, is going to give you a chance at getting random decoration rewards, which is rather interesting. However, we are not entering a world of I've been playing for 300 days and I've not seen a single attack decoration. They even specified that the devs themselves went the entirety of World without getting an iron wall jewel. So now in Wilds, every single skill decoration is going to be attainable. They said through alchemy, but I assume that also means like crafting, because otherwise alchemy, if it's melding, would also be RNG. So you can get every skill's decoration for certain. However, that's only single skill decorations. If you want the more powerful, more efficient, multi-skill, more potent decorations, they're going to be the RNG chase item, which is really, really lovely, especially for build crafting, because you can always assume a baseline access to various skills to fill various decoration slots. Having a fully available weak set of decorations, but it covers every skill in the game, with more potent versions to free up more space for more skills as the kind of grindy chase, that seems really, really solid, and it's nice to see that they really have, taken on board the frustrations that come with incredibly rare RNG decoration skills that some people just never see. So while, of course, I'm keen to find out, literally the specifics in-game from this overarching system, it sounds like a really solid way to do things. Another just straight up, hey, look at this, a new thing in Wilds is the Ray Dow hunting horn that we see in a few of the clips, which looks really, really cool. I love the sort of thunder drum aesthetic, the scales up the middle, we see it's got the lightning element, of course, and it's a really nice designed weapon. It's our first little hint at Ray Dow kind of anything, actually, and it makes me really excited to see what his kind of golden lightning greatsword's going to be, even though, of course, we won't be using it, because it'll be thunder element. In any case, that's a fun little spot. As I said, they hard deconfirmed Basarios, so that's not something we need to worry about, which kind of takes us into more of the sort of looser philosophy stuff that is still really fascinating to get an insight into how they're approaching Wilds and its design. On the weapon front, they do, to go back to Hunting Horn, specify it really has changed a lot, and we have seen that, and it's quite the departure from its previous versions, which I think is really, really good. We also had mentioned how they had to solve on your ranged weapons not needing to constantly resupply with ammo and coatings, because now you can just constantly hunt without the loading, without the back and forth. You need to be able to do that without just being really weak. So making basic stuff stronger, managing gorges instead, became the theme of the weapon. And indeed, across the weapons, their goal is to always mold them to always be their heart and soul of the weapon, but then actually apply them to the unique stuff in the game, which of course makes sense. And there's a lot of new technology and animation work that lets actions get a lot more complex and smoothly chain from one another, and just harkening back to the you had to stand still and full complete an animation to heal, to now the much more smoother on the go stuff we've been used to. They also say this is the team's first time at designing an opening set of weapons, the Hope weapons, for a game. It didn't make sense to start with the usual like basic bone or iron, because we're a chosen hunter for the narrative, so they made the Hope series, and along with the armor, they really like it. And yes, we have seen stuff like that in other Monster Hunter games, but not this specific team doing it. Hell, they said they could see it being used to the very end of the game, just upgraded, so that's really nice. But then we get to sort of the deeper philosophy, where the greatsword, the core weapon of the game, guys, just saying, I've been telling you this entire time, even the devs knew it's the best weapon, if that's how we choose to interpret that, okay, that's how I'm choosing to interpret that, and it really is interesting, though. The first thing they designed was the greatsword's wound popper focus attack, and they wanted it to be cool more than anything else, even at the cost of performance, and it became the baseline for, okay, if we actually have managed to pull this off, we've got this lovely, stab it in, rip along, tear the monster, we can now expand into other weapons, confident we can make something that cool. Which then leads to the fact that greatsword is like their canary in the mine. It is the standard of Monster Hunter combat to them, and every other weapon is designed with greatsword in mind. The easy example of that is greatsword is the base pace of the game. It's a slow, heavy weapon, and they say if they can make the game feel fun on greatsword, then when they up the tempo with something like dual blades or the faster weapons, that's going to be fun too. Whereas if they design the game around something as fast as dual blades, then get to the greatsword, it's going to suck because the monsters are designed to dual blade speed, and then their greatsword is going to really suffer. So greatsword is kind of like the core tempo of everything that the other weapons play around and have different strengths and weaknesses, which honestly makes a lot of sense, and you can kind of like, oh yeah, you feel that when you are playing the greatsword. And honestly, it might explain a long way to why I've always had such an affinity for it, because it really does feel like Monster Hunter. So ultimately, if the current Monster Hunter game they're working on feels fun on the greatsword, that gives them the confidence that it'll feel fun on all the other 13 weapons. And I think that is really, really interesting. And they say that a lot of the important elements of Monster Hunter can be found within the heart of greatsword and how it interacts with the systems in the game. And again, I really do, outside of, my own bias, I really do think you can see that, and it really does make sense. And they are a little bit concerned, or at least touch on the fact that once you get to endgame, you hunt a much smaller section of the roster, because they're the ones that matter for what you're farming, and if some weapons are better against them than others, it will kind of skew popularity, but they would rather weapons be unique and fun than just kind of homogeneously equally powerful or easy to use specifically. They want this lovely variety, and with the 2-weapon system, that kind of mitigates that itself. I'm, of course, giving you, the cliff notes here, and there is a lot of fascinating stuff if you are interested in reading it all in depth. Then we get to go on to how they choose returning monsters. We saw, of course, Basarios recently, and they wanted him to be a much later game threat, a big, tanky test of a hunter's skill, and they made him even harder to crack than usual, knowing that focus mode lets you more accurately aim at his soft bits, which is actually a really, clever use of it, and it can dictate monster balance in that way. Not in the sense of big, zone-wide attacks and hyperspeed monsters, but in terms of precision difficulty, and I think that's really, really cool, and I wonder how that applies to even higher tier stuff than gravios. But I think the two most interesting bits of info, we touched on one before, them really stressing how much they know Lagiacrus is loved, how much Tokuda-san himself loves Lagiacrus, he helped design it, and that he really specified they have heard how much we want him to come back, and he assures us no one wants him back as much as him, ... So, it really feels like, it feels like the vibe of, guys, if there is any way we can justify it, and it's hard because there's no underwater combat, combat, which they talked about, we will do it. If we can make it work and feel natural within our ethos of how we choose monsters, which we'll go on to, we will do it. So I am really kinda... I'm more hopeful than before I found any information out, essentially, and I think that's really, really good. I honestly, I'm feeling Lagiacrus, but that also sounds a bit tinfoil hatty, so take it with a grain of salt. Rathalos, however, is a bigger deal than we realized. They said that in World, obviously a lot of people hadn't been exposed to Monster Hunter. World was a smash hit, and now a lot of people have. But back in base World, they wanted Rathalos to just be this instant, iconic apex of the ancient forest woven into the ecosystem. Everybody can get used to him as the flagship of the series, and now they have. So they don't want Rathalos, they say, to be just in Wilds as a part of it, same as always, okay, it's Rathalos. They want to see if they can do him in a way that is actually fresh or interesting. And when asked, like, specifics on that, there's more just kind of, like, awkward, like, oh, what do we say? This is difficult. They specifically say this is awkward to answer. And they essentially leave it with, look, we want Rathalos to be different, how he's presented, how he comes across when you meet him, and we just hope that you like what we've done with big smiles on their faces. So that's curious, isn't it? They want to do something more interesting with Rathalos, basically can't say anything, and to me have the vibe of, oh, we've done something big, but we can't say, we hope you like it. What is going on there? I am fascinated. I feel like either the story beat of Rathalos' introduction into Wilds is going to be ridiculous, like he's going to be used in a really important moment to reveal something crazy, or they have taken Rathalos and done something to him that is crazy. Either way, I'm in. That's a really exciting thing to do for the monster that, yes, we know needs to be there. Rathalos means Monster Hunter, but that we might be getting a little bit like, yep, okay, it's Rathalos. So that's really, really exciting. And they said they always want returning monsters to feel, of course, fresh. They choose ones that they know they can give a really good new lick of paint to and make it really worthwhile. And there's a lot of things that go into that choice. It's not just popularity. Look at all of the monster roster as a sort of catalogue, and then they pick which one would shine best in the situation they've created. The situation being mechanically, the environment, the ecology of what they've set up in this given Monster Hunter game. And I think that's a really lovely way to do it. What matters most is, yes, being able to give it this fresh look for returning players, but also that it makes sense as a returning monster in the context of when you fight it, why you find it, what you're trying to achieve with its gameplay and mechanical teaching, and the location it's going to be based in. Congalala is a good example. They said it's the first returning monster that you will see, and yeah, that makes sense, it's an early game low tier threat, but it fits perfectly into the Scarlet Forest, but also it's a quirky, funny, silly monster with what it does, and that blends into the Woodwoods, which supposedly are kind of quirky too, and we see in the little intro snippet of its cutscene, the Woodwoods messing with it, and, you know, you kind of get that natural playful interaction, on top of it being, you know, a forest, so perfect for Congalala to exist in, and thus we have this lovely selection of, yes, it's a monster people will appreciate, and they said they were blown away by how hype everyone was to see Congalala. They said it must have been Congalala's best day ever, which I just love. The devs are all wonderful, like the passion they talk about Monster Hunter, it's so lovely to hear, and thus he was there. Yankutku has always been a pack flock monster, but they've never been able to really do that until Wilds, so now that that's a technology, packs of monsters, finally bringing back Yankutku makes natural sense. But Yankutku in earlier games used to be like your first proper wyvern. In Monster Hunter 1 it was your first wyvern you fought and was quite a good teaching monster. It became known as the sensei, but in the context of Wilds that doesn't make as much sense because they don't want it to be hard enough to be a sensei, so instead they're going to do something different with it, make it actually get involved at an interesting moment, not in the way you expect. and that's really, really fun too. And again, plays into what we've seen of him. In fact, Takura-san has his own reptiles. He loves them, he looks after them, and I mean, I feel obviously kinship there. I have plenty of reptiles, snakes, and lizards, and adore them, setting up the Bavarians and their homes. And he actually brought in one of his shedded skin of his lizard to help the artist come up with Yankutku's skin texture. And I think that's just a really little charming way to do things. So yeah, a lot of this is really lovely to know. Some of it quite juicy, some of it just really fun, but all of it worthwhile if you are a Monster Hunter fan. I hope you've enjoyed this kind of like, you know, blitz summary, and again, the full interviews are out there and definitely worth your time. For now though, let me know what you think. Like you've enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more, consider supporting the future channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.